Oh no, thank you. It's definitely a pleasure. I was thinking back to a couple years ago where my business partner and we came down to your gym in New Jersey, and he got the certification, the underground strength coach
Yeah.
certification, and
What was his name? It's all like a blur to
Cedric,
me. Yeah. Yeah.
Cedric Dickens, yeah.
Yeah. Where are you guys located?
We're in the Washington D.C. area.
Yeah, I remember that. Like outside. Yeah.
Yes,
Yep. I
yes,
remember that.
yeah,
Nice.
yeah. So every time I listen to your podcast and I see your training, I say, well, I was a little part of that
Yeah.
because you allowed me to flip the tire, at least come in and try it out.
That's great. Yeah. Time goes too fast, man. It goes too fast.
Yeah, it does. It does. So I wanted to thank you for the opportunity
Sure.
to allow me to talk to you. I know you're so busy, so I want to
It's all
jump
good.
right into it.
Yeah. Is Kelvin, are you okay if I record this on my end as well?
Yes. Yes, sir.
Cool. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
All right, great. So I'm just going to record it. And then I usually, like, if I do a podcast, I always cross post it.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. No problem.
Cool.
I'm just trying to make sure I'm all set up on this end.
I can't keep up with technology. So I have a big podcast I'm doing tomorrow with a friend.
Okay.
And I always did it through Skype. So
Right.
he's like, come on, man, Skype, that's from the dinosaurs. I was like, okay, it's on then.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So just to go on your history, you started training in the 1980s, I believe, right?
I started training in 89, my man.
Wow, 89. Yeah, and your brother actually kind of helped you and got you started with the training with the bodybuilding, and you were in your parents' garage at that time?
You know, so right now, this is like always a very nostalgic time for me. So it's right now, it's the month of June. I started training in June of 1989. I started using my brother's. He had a Joe Weider weight bench, you know, with the leg extension and leg curl attachment. We had, it was like a plastic barbell and then the sand-filled weights.
Right.
Had a couple of spin lock barbells that you would spin the collars on. Wow. And so he was 2 years old, like 2.5 years older than me. But he was very much into fitness. You know, he was very much into running, lifting, anything. So, you know, when we were kids, my dad got us a Doberman. And my brother started running the dog every morning before school, then every afternoon after school. And so my brother was kind of into that, where I remember it took me time to get into that. I remember trying to like use the weights in 6th grade, and I didn't take to it. I remember being bored. Then in 7th grade, I trained for like 2 to 3 weeks. Then I stopped, and I still remember, Kelvin, saying to myself, man, there's got to be something wrong with me. Like I can't work out for more than 3 weeks. Wow. Something is wrong with me. And then 8th grade, it was like the beginning or the first week of June. It's like 2 weeks before middle school is over. And I went downstairs into my brother's room and I opened Arnold's encyclopedia. Okay. And I think I just flipped it open and I saw a photo of him squatting. And then there was like the instructional photo of how to squat. So I started squatting, and then I just followed his program, which was shoulders, legs, chest and back, shoulders and arms. And I got into this routine of come home from school and lift the weights, go and like exercise. And then like 2 weeks later, this girl was like, oh my God, Zach, look at your biceps. I had cut the sleeves off my shirt, and I was like, it's on.
Right. You know, I do think it's very good. Like when we get that attention, although we're married and we don't get that type of attention, but when we work out, and now when our athletes work out, they come and say, hey, coach, you know, they say I was looking good. You know, I'm looking in the mirror, and I know you talk a lot about we need to build those muscles that we really cannot see.
Internal. Yeah. You know, and so it's funny that you say that because, you know, that certainly evolved. And when you're young, that's how you're thinking. But for me, there was also a couple things there, Kelvin, was I was always the weakest kid in the neighborhood. Not
Mm-hmm.
that I got bullied, but I had gotten punched in the face enough times to know that I wasn't strong.
Right.
And I was afraid of certain kids.
Mm-hmm.
I had gotten my bike stolen because the
Mm-hmm.
kids were bigger. And
Mm-hmm.
so there was something within me that was beyond bigger biceps. And so when I would look at Arnold's encyclopedia, those old black and white photos, I felt like a movie was coming out of them. There was so much passion behind it. And I just wanted to, what is it like to be in the gym around people and be excited to train? And, yesterday I did like a consultation with University of Texas Sports Performance Department.
Awesome.
And so they were asking me what was like they were asking me a lot about my mistakes. And I said, one of my biggest mistakes was in my early years, I would talk to the kids only about winning, only about lifting more weight, jumping higher, throw further, run faster, only the sport outcome.
Right.
Until we lost one of those kids he got murdered. And I said, I look back and I said, all I spoke to that kid about was winning. I was never asking him about how things going at home, what's going on with college, what do you need me to do? How's, you got a girlfriend, whatever that stuff is.
Right.
And so I learned that, that to me was like the big moment of this is so much more than being big and strong. But, parents in the early days of me training their kids would reach out to me and say such things of the confidence their kids got. One I remember was this mom, their house had a pool and their kid was in high school. He would never take off his shirt in his own backyard, she said. So she said, we've had this pool for 5 years. He took his shirt off. His brother had his friends over. He had friends over. She's like, I don't even recognize my son. She's like, not only does he have this physique, she's like, but he's got confidence. He knows how to speak to people. Right. So when I hear that stuff, I'm like, okay, sports and strength and conditioning is just the vehicle for life, because eventually that all ends. Yeah. It all ends. And so, I still try to figure out how did I lose a kid? We've lost a kid. We lost his life. Sometimes we lose kids. If I'm at a university, they transfer out. And I wonder, where did I lose that kid? Where did I not connect with him deeper than just the weights? Right. And so the weights and the fitness and the exercise, Calvin, it's just a vehicle for life.
It is. I think it's funny you mentioned that, because Dan John and I talked about that.
I love that guy.
Yeah, and we talked about everyone is the same under the barbell. Everyone's the same under the barbell. But going further, we also talked about how can we as coaches become better leaders. Yeah. And I think in the age with social media, we have to put our content on there. But at the same time, when do we get away, or when should we get away from social media to actually leading these athletes, leading the coaches, so we don't lose players with everything that's going on now?
Yes.
We're losing. We're in a losing battle, so we have to gain trust with everybody. So how can we be better leaders?
Look, I'm the last guy that's going to say I'm a great leader, I'm a good leader. I just feel like at the end of the day, I always ask myself, did the way I coach, did the things I do, can I share it with wife and kids to make them proud? And I kind of have this tagline of the minimum effective dose in coaching is changing lives. Right. And so now I make it a point to talk much more about, guys, this is the workout we're doing. We're prepping for soccer. We're prepping for football. Right. I talk to them about excellence in all areas of life. I say, it's not good enough to do a great job here in the weight room, but then your teacher tells me you don't listen, you don't sit up front, you don't pay attention, you're disrespectful. Exactly. And so, these old values, the golden rule of treat others the way you wish to be treated, I think is as simple as that. And when I think of a leader, I don't necessarily think of somebody who's always in charge.
Exactly.
And so I got a good friend. He's in your area. He's in Alexandria, Virginia. So 20 minutes south of DC, right? Is that 20 minutes?
Yeah, it is.
He's, I'm interviewing him tomorrow. It's going to be his first real podcast. He's really laid kind of under the radar. But when I think of him, when I mention his name or just think of him, I want to be better.
Wow.
And to me, that's the kind of leader he is. Or that's a leader. Like he makes you better. He's not just dishing out the information, telling you how to do this. And so, you know, he says so many things that are always profound that makes me, you know, think of things. But he's a former Navy SEAL.
Okay.
We call him Quattro Deuce. He was the 42nd Black active Navy SEAL.
Oh, wow.
Okay?
Wow.
So he tells me this story. He told me this story. This story always it just hits my heart. So he said to me when he was going through BUD/S training, they start off with this crazy obstacle course. And he's like, man, I ran marathons. I ran ultra marathons. I'm zipping through the obstacle course, climbing walls, up and down the ropes. He's like, no problem. He's like, then they send us in the water. We got the water, like tread water test. And it's just to see who's going to quit. And so he says he's very animated. He's like, I'm swimming. I'm swimming. I'm treading the water. The guys around me are swimming. There's like 110, 120 guys start off in BUD/S. When they graduate, it's like the teens or the low 20s. So there's like a 90% failure, 90+% failure. He's like, this guy gives up. That guy gives up. He's like, I start getting tired. I'm getting tired. He's like, I'm going under. I'm going under. He's like, I give up. And one of the BUD/S instructors was a black man. And he goes, Zach, you know black men can't swim. So he goes, he says, there's like three black guys going through BUD/S. Pulls us out. And he says, you guys think this is about you? You think this is about you're tired swimming? He's like, this is bigger than you. I go, what do you mean? What does he mean it's bigger than you? He's like, he meant a couple of things. He meant, number one, we were focused on ourselves. We were focused on being tired of swimming, and so we gave up. He goes, but if you want to be a Navy SEAL, you're doing it to do something bigger than you. You're doing it to serve and protect your country. He goes, that's number one. He goes, number two, one of the instructors was a black man. He goes, I'm a black man. He told us that this is bigger than us. This is for our community of men. There's not a lot of black men that become Navy SEALs.
Right, exactly.
I said, so what happened? He's like, we did the swim test again, and I passed. Awesome. He goes, because I took the focus off myself. And so when he said that to me, I realized, like, that's what the leader does. The leader is willing to go through the suffering and the pain because he or she is helping others. They're going to carry others. And so what I learned from that was I would share it with the kids. I would say, you might be tired. You might have tough stuff going on at home. There could be all these things going on. But during those times, I just want you to take the focus off yourself and help the guy or the girl next to you. And then you're going to lead them through a tough time. And then because you're helping them, you realize you got to elevate your game. And that is essentially, you know, when I heard that from him, it's from the Navy SEAL quote, ready to lead, ready to follow, never quit. So with the Navy SEALs, sometimes you're the leader, sometimes you're the follower. But when you're following, it's not that you're blindly following. Everybody's a leader. That's what the leader does, is the leader creates more leaders. So you might have an expertise in this area. I'll follow you for that. You're the guy. You want the ball? I'm with you. I have an expertise in this area. I get the ball. Come on. I'll carry you on my back during this time. And so, look, I'm still trying to figure it out. But I know this. I know it's not just about the points on the scoreboard or the weights lifted. It's the ability to utilize strength and conditioning as the vehicle to change their life, not just for the short term that they're with you. You know, I'm full-time at a high school. Before this, I was at a college. They're with you for 4 years, maybe 5 years in college. But if you do it right, you impact them for the rest of your life. So that's, to me, the leader builds more leaders. And you're looking at something, it's got to be bigger than you. And look, in the beginning, I didn't know anything about that stuff, Kelvin. In the beginning, I knew how to like help athletes win more titles, win more championships.
Right.
And I'll tell you what, now I'm like having this memory of questioning myself of like, how come we have so many kids that win so much in high school, but then they don't compete in college? And then as the years went on, we had kids that maybe didn't win at these high levels,
right,
but then they continued to compete in college and surpassed, you know, what they were, what they did. In like, they were kind of like, they started as average, they became good, they went on to be great. And I realized that my coaching was just less focused on the sport itself and more about how can you challenge yourself? How can you take your inner strength and now impact others and help others? And so it's, to me, you know, being a leader, I think a lot of people, especially now, I feel like I've never seen, we're at such a divide. It's so heartbreaking to see that in this country. It's like so heartbreaking that we as coaches need to give these kids the confidence and the strength to simply be good people. You know, what's that saying? Hurt people, hurt people, right? And so I look at it like this. I don't care what the color of your skin is, what your religion is. And you said it about the weight room too. Are you are you nice or are you not nice? And that's the thing about the weight room, is it doesn't discriminate. I would tell the kids, I go, guys, here's the beauty of the weight room. Weight room doesn't matter, doesn't care about the money in your bank account, the car you drive, the color of your skin. The weight room never discriminates. The only thing the weight room cares about is your effort. So you're going to get out of it what you put into it. So it doesn't play a favor to you of the color of your skin or the money you got in your pocket. And so that's the beauty of the weight room, is like, we're all equal when we're in there. And it's like, you're either putting in the work or you're not. And in this world, I look at it like, hey man, you're either good, trying to put some good and some love into this world, or you're not. There's not a whole lot of middle ground there. You're kind of an either or.
Right. Yeah.
You know?
Yes, I agree. I think as coaches, we are shifting, strength coaches and coaches, we're shifting, as you mentioned, from the training aspect to almost the life aspect.
If you're really like Johnny Parker, legendary NFL strength coach, he said this to me. I interviewed him like a year ago.
Okay.
He said, Zach, good coaches coach weights. Great coaches coach people. And I was like, oh, that's what I just think about.
Right.
And so, look, there's a lot of good coaches out there that could teach a power clean way better than us. And they could, you know, recite Prilpin's chart and Zatsiorsky and super training, but they're not connecting with the kids.
Yeah.
And I was equally guilty of that, of just being, I'm about the training, I'm about winning.
Right.
And, you know, some of the kids that I love, they don't succeed the most in sport, but you know what? They get to a good college. They do good stuff. Like, being a great athlete is like this little piece of the puzzle.
Right. Yeah. No, yeah, exactly. And kids nowadays, as we lead them, and I was listening to some of your podcasts, and I agree that the kids today now, I don't want to say soft, but they need a lot of work.
Dude, my own kids need a lot. I just kicked my kid out. I said, dude, it's like 80 plus degrees. It's beautiful. Get off that computer before I destroy it. I'm gonna sledgehammer the computer, man.
Exactly. So how can we build? So we can talk about fatherhood and raising our kids outside of coaches, but how can we build the kids in the weight room to have the mental mindset, the mental toughness, to be strong as we were coming up in the era that we came up? Yeah. You came up, you were born in Israel?
Born in Israel. We moved to the Bronx when I was 11 months old.
Right.
Then I think at age 4, we moved to Edison, New Jersey, which is like super multicultural. There's, you know, I taught in Edison 2 years ago. I taught there from 98 to 09. And I went back in 2017, 2018, something like that.
Right.
Edison is white, black, Asian, Indian, refugees, immigrants. We got government housing. We got projects. We got blue collar. We got everything. It's like the most multicultural place with people from all walks of life. To me, it was tough growing up in Edison. And I think we grow up tough and then we're like, man, I don't want my kid to struggle like I did. So then you try to move somewhere that's quote unquote nice, less dangerous. Nobody's going to punch my kid in the face for his lunch bag. Nobody's going to steal his bike. And then you realize, man, the struggle is what made me tough and what helps me be a better parent, a better fill in the blank. And so we can't thrust them in. We can't tell our kids, hey, man, that's it. I'm taking you back to where I grew up. It's not like that. My wife grew up in an apartment complex. I used to hang out in that apartment all the time. People stealing bikes. I remember seeing kids get beat up. Like, it was all around us. My son, nobody's ever punched him in the face. The kids today, if they get quote unquote bullied, it's through Snapchat or something. And so what these kids need is we need to make the training tough so that they learn to overcome. And you know what sometimes is the simplest thing in being tough? Showing up. Like if you don't show up, forget it. You're not tough. You could be a badass for 2 weeks, then you disappear for a month. You're weak. That's soft. I need you to show up when you're busy, when the cards are stacked against you. And so that is the element I really try to push for kids. It's as simple as this. We lose a lot of athletes during the sports season. So a kid plays football, parents are like, oh, the football season, like we have to stop. Like they get crazy, like the world is ending. And it's like, listen, let's just have Kelvin sign up once a week and show up for 25 to 30 minutes. And that like breaks them emotionally. And I'm like, man, like that would be like, my boss saying, Zach, can you one day a week just stay after another 25 minutes? I'd be like, I don't know. I can't do it. He'd be like, what the hell is wrong with you?
Exactly.
25 minutes one day a week. And so those little things are actually big. They create big change. And so I'm very careful of not trying to kind of do these extreme things. I look at it like inch by inch, brick by brick, get them uncomfortable. Okay, you're showing up once a week. That's 100% more than zero. Oh, you're skipping breakfast? Listen, man, I don't care what you eat if it's a Pop-Tart, you're eating something. It's better than nothing. Let's start with eating breakfast. And so we need to find these little pieces of the puzzle to sneak into their overall life to get them better. And so, if you were asking me 10 years ago, Zach, how do we get these kids tough? I'd be telling you about pushing trucks, sprinting hills, crazy circuit training, but that stuff breaks them. And I even remember like when I was at Rutgers, I'm really close to the head associate coach there, and he's an intense guy. And he told me when he was coaching at Michigan, he's like, Zach, sometimes I was so intense with the kids, I broke them. He's like, it just shut them down. He's like, you can't be that intense with them. He's like, you got to bring them in. You have to find out what matters to them. You got to learn who the kid is outside of his or her soccer and basketball and softball, because then they think you're just external. You're just training the person for a faster 40-yard dash. And so when you're working with kids, going back to that Johnny Parker quote, great coaches coach people. So you got to find out, how are things going on at home? How's school going? I work full time at a high school. And so during the lunchtime, I go into the cafeteria. I go and sit down with the hockey players. I sit down with the baseball players. There's like multiple cafeterias. I go to the other one. I see the girls from the soccer team, the field, they're like, man, Coach Evanesh cares. I'm showing up. If they think you're just about the lifting, and what's interesting is when this younger generation, I'm talking even through college, and even me as a 44-year-old adult, I want to make certain people in my life proud, and so kids really want to make the people who care about them proud. They don't want to let you down. And so when you're making an effort and showing them how much you care, they don't want to let you down. It's like they feel bad. They don't want to tell you they skipped breakfast. They want to have some good news to share with you. And so, you know, that's the art of coaching. And look, every day, Kelvin, I fail. Every day I fail. Every day I learn something about how to get better. And I think kids, they don't respond to the intense ways that I once had. I'm still intense. I'm still getting pretty fired up. But I always close it out with a positive.
Exactly.
You finish on a positive. And I learned that. Oh, who taught me that? Finish on a positive. It was, I think it was like a teacher. And so, you know, when I taught at the elementary school, and, you know, at the elementary school, the kids want phys ed. You know, they're ages 6 to 11. They're just babies. You know, my son turns 12 this weekend. But age 6 is a baby. You know, if a kid does something bad, you give him a little warning. Talk about why that was wrong. Okay? Then you give the kid a hug. Right? You finish on the positive. Or let's say the kid's having a real bad day and it's like 3 warnings. All right, 3 strikes. You got to sit out. You make them sit for like 2 minutes. They watch the other kids play. 2 minutes. And then you say, Kelvin, you think you could do a good job? You think you could be a great listener? I know you could be a great listener, but I need you. Do you think you could do it? Yes, Mr. Evanish, I could do it. All right, my man, listen, I love you. Sometimes we have bad days. Get in there and play. You finish. You always finish on the positive. And that's like, you know, so you can give them a little tough love. All they need is an ounce of it. But you finish on a positive. And I think in my early years, I was nuts. I used to kick kids out of the gym. I didn't give a second chance. Listen, when I was a kid, I was pretty dumb. I was not the most coachable, you know? And so these kids need more than 3 chances. Sometimes you got to give them 100 chances. You got to keep opening it. You got to keep opening up your arms back to them to let them come back in. And, you know, so, sometimes we lose kids because you just have to find a different way to communicate. And it's kind of like, it's a numbers. When you're coaching thousands of kids every year, you're not going to win them all. That's the unfortunate reality. It's kind of heartbreaking.
And that's the goal, finding the right way to communicate. I know when I was the strength coach at some high schools, I was really hardcore because they weren't listening. They were coming in to the weight room. They didn't eat anything. They didn't eat lunch. They want to hang out and talk to the girls. You know, so we only have 15 minutes left in the session. I understood, but you know, you're a middle school, high school athlete. You want to get better. But then when it got to my son and he started wrestling, I kind of learned myself because I was the same way my father was. My father was a great man, but he was really hardcore. Always also, I found myself hollering at him if he didn't win a wrestling match or in the home, and he, you know, it's just different in sports and in life. So I think as a father and trying to separate the coach from the father, I'm looking as like, for example, my religion, I'm a Christian, I'm looking the way Jesus loved me, and I have to love my son, my family, my athletes that same way. So I'm learning how to take the coach hat off, although I'm a coach, but put the father hat on with all of my athletes, especially my own. And it's a struggle because
it's hard, man.
It's the life is tough. And, you know, I always said, I'd rather, you know, get in your face before a police officer do or someone else do. That's why we have you in wrestling, or I tell my athletes, that's why you're doing this, that's why I'm talking to you this way. But in the end, I've learned to embrace them, to hug them, and to say, hey, we can hit it another day. So now I would see some of my athletes in Chick-fil-A. I'll see a lot of my athletes in the store, and they'd be like, hey, Coach King, what's going on? And you remember these days. So I do see how a positive approach to my athletes and as being a dad to my son has really changed things.
Listen, you know what I said to the coaches yesterday at a University of Texas? And they were pretty young. You know, the director, Donnie, made He's a little. I'm 44. I think Donnie's
Mm-hmm.
50 or something like that. But I think the majority of the staff was in their 20s.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, listen, I said, whether you like it or not, you're the father and the mother when these kids come to university, especially the freshmen. They're living in a dorm, whereas the sophomores and older kids have an apartment with their teammates. Mm-hmm. They're in a dorm. They've left their parents. You are not just a strength coach. You're the mother. You're the father. They may have never had a mother or father. You're the mother or father. I know that's weird. You're like 24-year-old coach, but you have to be their mother or father. And, you know, you mentioned your son. This is the message I give to our coaches, you know, that we've got two locations, is I tell them this. I go, I know one of our coaches, she has a baby daughter, you know, she's like 6 months old, but the others are not parents. And I say, here's what you got to make pretend. You're coaching a group. Now I want you to step outside of your body and make pretend your kid is in that group, and you're looking at the group. You're seeing what the coach is doing. What would you like that coach to do? Is the coach only going to talk about how to deadlift, you know, or you're a sport coach? I pay attention to, you know, my daughter plays a lot of tennis. Okay. Does this sport coach only talk to my daughter about how to swing and how to do the forehand? And or are you going to start talking to her about life? Right. You know, are you going to talk to her about something this is tennis, this is the surface. Can you get something a little bit deeper than that? What about my son, these baseball coaches? Yeah. How do you want your child to be coached? And that's how you got to coach these kids. And so when people say, Zach, where do you have all this energy? I go, number one, I love these kids. Even the kid that makes me nuts, I love that kid. Right. Yeah. Number two, I pretend that that's my son or my daughter. And I need to give them all my energy. I don't care if it's the end of the night and I didn't eat and I argued with my wife and blah, blah, blah. It doesn't matter. Nobody cares about what happened to me. This is their time. I'm pretending it's my kid. I'm going to just pour my heart and soul into it. Right. And I'll tell you what, coach, that takes some toughness. That takes grit as a coach. And some of the younger coaches who are maybe half our age, they don't have that grit because they're like how I was and you were in our younger years. Win, move more weight, get a PR, squat heavier. They're thinking about that. They're not thinking about like what's in the heart of that kid. And look, it takes time. It takes time. Here I am, you know, the first person I coached was like 1995 or 96. I got a job at a hospital fitness center. Okay. So I was a 19-year-old, I was 19. I wasn't even 20. And I started coaching people, you know, adults. And so it's taken me decades to figure it out, man. And I'm still figuring it out. I still mess it up every day.
Right. Yeah. And I do think now we hear what's the best certification to take, et cetera. And I think it should be along with what's the best book to read. And there are many, you know, like yours, but how can we be better people and better coaches to these athletes? And of course, in the end, numbers matter, but life matters the most.
Very true.
And I think that's the thing where a lot of coaches like ourselves are starting to get to, and some of the seasoned coaches were starting to realize that now, where, as you said, you told your staff, hey, you have to look outside yourself and look at these as, you know, your son or daughter, brother, or sister.
Yeah, I need to, if I'm going to, like my buddy Quattro Deuce said, Quattro Deuce, it's bigger than you. It ain't about you. Right. Oh, I'm tired, so I'm going to quit. No, man, I'm going to carry you. And you know, now what's interesting is whenever I work at some place, I get this like immense pride. When I was at Lehigh, I loved Lehigh. I loved the kids. Then I get to Rutgers. I love it. I'm a Scarlet Knight. You know, now I'm at a high school where, you know, our mascot is the eagle. It's called a war eagle. Okay. And I'm like, man, dude, we are war eagles, and we gotta take pride in this. Right. Take pride in the name that's on the back of your shirt when you're playing, and the family that you represent.
Exactly.
It takes us a lot of time. You know, one guy I learned from a lot. I started learning from him in the early 2000s when I really got like full-time into it. Dwayne Carlisle. Do you know who Dwayne is?
I do.
So Dwayne's amazing. I mean, just like the way he speaks, it's like he always gets you like you're like hanging on. You're like, what?
Right.
He's like, he'd be like, Calvin,
yeah,
want to know what's important? And then he just like pauses. You're just like waiting. But he spoke about when he was coaching his kids, because Dwayne was a Division I athlete. He's been a strength coach at the Division I level, the NFL level. He's a beast.
Right.
He came up with the 60-minute rule where like he couldn't give his kids feedback after their track and field or their football or baseball. So the car ride home was a pleasant ride versus like, Calvin, you know what you did? You know, Calvin, you hit that home run, but he's like, he's like, my wife, he said his wife gave him that. He's like, it's a 60-minute rule. You can't talk about the sport for 60 minutes or at the dinner table. I was like, man, your wife is smart, my man. But, you know, when I first listened to his interviews in the early 2000s, you know, he wasn't speaking about that. His kids were babies, you know. He was speaking about speed and how to get faster and how to be strong. And so that's how we all start. We all are starting with this kind of like sport performance. Then we start realizing, man, this is way bigger and way more important than sport. And I also think too, you know what I think helps is, you know, did you grow up in DC, Calvin?
I did, yes.
DC's got some tough areas. I'm right, am I right?
Yeah, I actually grew up in one of the tough areas in Southeast Washington, DC. So
DC, I've heard of DC having tough areas. And Edison is pretty bad now. Edison was tough when I grew up, but now it's really bad. And I feel like if you're a coach and then your first job is at a university, you got this multi-million-dollar weight room. Everything's so perfect.
Right.
You don't even know how to fight for anything. And then it's very hard for you to teach a kid how to fight for anything. You know, my first, you know, quote unquote gym was the garage of my parents' house. It was like cinder blocks and 2 pairs of dumbbells and a squat stand and then stones in the backyard. And so I've always loved not having the perfect setup because I always felt like all of that comfort, all of that perfection, it actually hinders the athlete's performance because they're so used to being pampered. They got all this technology and like, listen, hey, before you train, your special workout gear is going to be laid out for you. You don't even got to touch it. There's an assistant who puts it out for you. And it's like, what is this? Like, I don't got to fight for nothing.
Right.
And look, that's why people who come from nothing, who have to fight out of it, like it's easy for them to succeed in those, you know, that movie Pursuit of Happiness with Will Smith. He had to fight so hard for that job, you know, because everybody quit, but he had grown up fighting. He was used to having to like earn it. And so what do we, you know, my buddy Joe DeSena owns Spartan Race. And why does he do tough things with his kids? Joe grew up in Queens. You know, he watched his neighbors get arrested or get murdered. You know, they were all part of the mob. So he's like, now I moved to Vermont. He's like, everything's so perfect. We got a refrigerator filled up with food at all times. You know, everything's so comfortable. He's like, that's why you have to fabricate discomfort in your life because comfort is the enemy.
Right, exactly. And I agree in a way we're going post quarantine, post COVID. I mean, it's still out there, but the gyms are opening back up, schools, sports. Training is never going to be the same. And like you said, people had the chance to operate in discomfort, and they did because they couldn't get to the gym. But going back to the gym, kids going back to the gym, it's not going to be the same. It's not going to be laid out. So, and I know that you and you're more big on, you know, the odd objects, et cetera, like that. And I think, I do too. And I think that's where the fitness industry training, it needs to go. Yeah, they can have the clubs for the elderly population, but I think the kids and those that are able should be able to put a sandbag on their shoulder and walk around a building or run with it, or, you know, or pick up a stone, you know, and not be so comfortable to go into a gym where it's no air condition, or do work on a playground.
Yeah,
and that's why I try to encourage my son. Right, exactly. It's too easy, and life is not easy.
The gym is air conditioned. Then after my set, I'm not even going to get off the bench. I'm going to pull my phone out of my pocket and lay on the bench. And I've seen it, because when I was taking my daughter to tennis 2 years ago, when I was working far away at a school, it was like an hour and a half sometimes commute. So I couldn't even train at my own gym. So I'd take my daughter to tennis. I'd go to like a local gym, a Crunch gym. Even this one gym, it was like quote unquote hardcore. People were on their phones. I couldn't believe it. And so now, you know, you're right. The quarantine forced people to kind of start training with cinder blocks and make their sandbags and pushing trucks. I didn't do it in those early 2000s because I was locked out of a gym or I was desperate. I did it because I was like, man, this stuff gets you tough, and it gets you strong, and not just physically tough, but you start getting this like confidence that you didn't have before. You get like, man, I got some swagger, because you are going through tough things every day. And so I hope people continue with it. I don't, you know, the gyms are looking pretty wild with all the plastic dividers up. I mean, but there's not a whole lot of social aspect in the gyms anymore, because, you know, the gyms don't play music because everybody's got their AirPods in. So how can I talk? That used to be my very, like, I used to look forward to that as a kid, that I could go to the gym and I could talk to the older guys who would mentor me and share some training tips with me. But if everybody had their headphones on, I don't think I would be excited to go to the gym. I became friends with all these guys at the gym. Then I would go and speak to the guy working behind the juice bar and do my homework there. It was the conversations and the camaraderie. And now that stuff's MIA, man. It's missing in action.
And I think by getting back training outside, away from the gym, that's where everyone would kind of get back to that community, because I try to encourage my son, because I do strongman training, and do competitions, something new, just so I can kind of show him and keep my body in shape. And I get a lot of my athletes say, look, I'm like, Coach, what are you doing? What are you lifting this stuff? And I said, hey, you know, I got to stay competitive. But I think by getting back outside training, and I do a lot of stuff, and I have my son do it as well, it's feeling that way. It's not an arrogant, almost like a swag that's saying, you know, I'm a little bit tough. I can do it. I can push through anything. And that's the mindset that I want him to have, and a lot of my athletes coming up in this world today. And I think that's the future of training moving forward. Not to get back, well, people are going to do bench press. They're going to do the stuff in the gym, but the odd object training, because it builds toughness. It's life. It's almost like a life sport.
Yeah, man. You're training for life. You mentioned your son, which reminds me of when we moved to this house 10 years ago in a few months. So my son was like a year and a half. And so in the garage, I had a climbing rope, rings, kettlebells. And so my kids would see me, you know, outside, farmer walking bells, sprinting, and then they'd climb the rope. And then they'd take the mat outside and like stand on their head and do like, you know, forward rolls. They thought it was normal to do hard things. And also kind of what you're saying, like, I'm sure you notice it, your son, your kids look at you like, man, they think you're a superhero when you're lifting weights. They look at you like you could lift a house, you know? And so those stories to me, I love. You know, you mentioned Dan John earlier. The staff yesterday at University of Texas asked me about books I recommend. And I told them a lot of Dan John's books. I love, you know, Easy Strength, but my favorite book of his was Never Let Go. Because it really inspired me with my own book, because it was like, oh, these ain't no like perfectly organized chapters. And I remember him talking about seeing Robbie Robinson training in the gym, but then seeing him out on the beach doing sand sprints. And he said, we walked on the beach for like 30 minutes. And Robbie was like, look, man, you can't go wrong with like benching, pull-ups, power cleans, hill sprints. And it was like, he was just talking about basics. Right. So when I first started training out of my garage, I had a 300-pound barbell set, squat stands, a pair of 50 and a pair of 100-pound dumbbells, then the outdoors. And like, you could get strong.
Exactly.
And you could you can develop performance and mindset with just these basic elements. And then, of course, you know what I told people with this quarantine in the beginning? I said, look, everybody could sprint. Everybody could do push-ups. You want to really step it up? Go push the car. Go push the truck. Go to an empty parking lot. Put it in neutral. Push. 3 to 5 sets, 100 to 200 feet. How many people push the car and truck? I don't know. Everybody wants I got to drive there. Like, yeah, man, you got to do a little something to, you got to earn it. That's it.
Exactly. Yeah. So as we close, did you want to leave the readers with anything else, or the viewers, or anything else?
Man, let's go back. Let's not ignore what's going on. Like I said, I haven't had any conversations or podcasts on this, topic with kind of the divide of our country. Right. But I think just be a good person, man. Right. That's it. Treat others the way you want to be treated. I'm still confused when I see people not treating other people well, nicely, and that's it, man. And if you're a coach out there, the minimum effective dose is changing lives. Yeah. And I think this should be like an episode people have to re-listen to, because sometimes as coaches, you get tired because you're pouring all your energy into people, and you're like your hormones are going, your cortisol dump. It's like cortisol dump. It's exhausting, and sometimes you need to remind yourself why you're coaching, and that helps you come back and have more energy as a coach.
Yeah, and I do think it's important as to have these conversations with other coaches, because I think podcasting for strength and conditioning coaches are taking off now, and I think it's the relationship builder. So I was thinking the other day, conference versus podcast, and to be honest, I'd rather do a podcast with multiple people. I know the conferences are great, but I think with the podcast, you can be more personable, you can be more intimate, and then talking offline, et cetera.
It's hard. You know what the thing is with the in-person stuff? Well, now traveling is very difficult with all this COVID stuff, and you have to quarantine if you go to another state. But people are used to technology, and we can't deny that. They want fast, immediate access to things. You're in DC, I'm in New Jersey, somebody in Nebraska or Los Angeles or San Francisco or Phoenix, they don't want to have to. I'll tell you what, I got 2 kids. I don't like when I have to travel. I don't. I'm a big homebody. I like to go to the gym or do the coaching and come home and have dinner and see my wife and kids. Exactly. I do see other coaches traveling a lot, and I'm like, man, if I don't think they have kids, I could never leave my kids for that long. So, if I do traveling, I'm integrating my family, and we're doing it together as a team.
Right.
As a team.
All right. Well, thank you, Coach. Thank you so much for everything you've done for the industry. This was a great conversation. Like you said, people that they should re-listen, because it's not your average conversation. And that's my goal. I know that's your goal. And moving forward.
That's it, man. Changing lives. That's the minimum effective dose.
Exactly. So I'll be in contact. Thank you so much.
All right, Coach. Thanks,
have a good one. Yes, sir.
You too.
All right, bye.